During the Cold War, the CIA spotted something on the Caspian Sea so massive, so terrifying, that they could only call it the monster. It was not a ship. It was not a plane. It was something that should not exist. But before I show you what it was, you need to see the 6 machines that led up to it, because the Soviets did not just build one impossible vehicle. They built dozens. Here are the top 7 most insane Soviet vehicles ever created, ranked. And number 1 is the reason NATO had nightmares. Number 7, Antonov A-40, the Flying Tank. It is 1942. The Soviet Union is in the middle of the deadliest war in human history. And someone asks the question, what if a tank could fly? Soviet engineer Oleg Antonov, yes, the same Antonov who later built the world's largest cargo planes, strapped biplane wings and a twin boom tail onto a T-60 light tank. The idea was simple: tow it behind a Tupolev TB-3 bomber, release it mid-air, and glide it straight into enemy territory. On its maiden test flight, the tank actually got airborne, but the TB-3 bomber could not handle the drag. The tow plane's engine started overheating dangerously. The pilot had to cut the tank loose early. The T-60 glided down, landed on its tracks, and the tank driver simply drove away like nothing happened. But the project was killed, not because the tank could not fly, but because no Soviet bomber was powerful enough to tow it. Now, a flying tank sounds insane, but the next vehicle on this list had technology so advanced, it would be illegal to use it in war today. Number 6. 1K-17 Szhatie, the laser tank. In the 1970s, the Soviet Union began developing something straight out of science fiction, a laser tank. The 1K-17 Szhatie, meaning compression, was a self-propelled laser vehicle built on a modified 2 S-19 to self-propelled howitzer chassis, with a battery of solid-state laser projectors mounted in the turret. The tank used an intense laser beam to disable the optical electronic equipment of enemy vehicles, blinding guidance systems, frying cameras, and disabling missile sensors. Each of the 13 laser tubes housed a 30-kilo artificial ruby, and the system also required silver, aluminum, xenon, and neodymium. This made it astronomically expensive. The most advanced version arrived in 1989, assembled in December 1990, and trialed until 1992, showing promising results. But 2 things killed it. First, the development and manufacturing of the laser projection system had become too expensive and unnecessary after the Soviet collapse. Second, if it had entered service and was used, it would breach Geneva Convention protocols, specifically the Blinding Laser Weaponry Protocol put forward by the United Nations on October 13, 1995. A weapon too dangerous for war itself. A laser tank is terrifying, but what about a vehicle so huge that it was taller than a 2-story building and got stuck in mud permanently? Number 5. Tsar tank, the giant tricycle. 1914. World War I. Trenches stretch across Europe, and no vehicle can cross them. Russian engineer Nikolai Lebedenko proposed something absurd, a tank shaped like a giant tricycle. The Tsar tank stood on 2 front wheels, each 9 meters, nearly 30 feet in diameter. That is taller than a 3-story building. A single smaller rear wheel sat at the back. The whole machine weighed approximately 60 tons. It was armed with multiple cannon turrets on top and machine guns surrounding the wheels. The idea was simple: roll over any trench, any barricade, anything in its path. But there was one fatal flaw: all the weight, the guns, the armor, the engine, pressed down on that tiny rear wheel. During its very first test, the rear wheel sank into soft ground. The mighty Tsar tank was stuck. They tried to pull it out. They could not. It sat there, abandoned in the forest, for nearly 8 years, until it was finally scrapped in 1923. Quick question: what do you think is crazier, a tricycle tank or a bomber bigger than AB-52, built in 1933? Let me show you. Number 4. Kalinin K-7, the 1930s flying fortress. In the early 1930s, Soviet aircraft designer Konstantin Kalinin built one of the largest aircraft the world had ever seen. The K-7 was a giant creation, even by modern standards, measuring a wingspan of 173 feet 11 inches. It was powered by 7 Michelin AM-34F engines, with a max takeoff weight of 38,000 kilograms. That is roughly 84,000 pounds. The original design called for 6 engines in the wing leading edge, but when the projected loaded weight was exceeded, 2 more engines were added. One source noting a 7th pusher engine first, then an 8th. The wing was so thick, over 7 feet, that in the passenger version, seats were arranged inside the wings. In military configuration, it could carry up to 120 passengers or soldiers, a bomb load of up to 16,000 kilograms. That is over 35,000 pounds of bombs. The aircraft completed 7 test flights before a crash due to structural failure of one of the tailbones on November 21, 1933. The accident killed 14 people aboard and 1 on the ground. The technology of the 1930s simply was not ready for a plane this ambitious. We are past the halfway mark, and the vehicles are about to get much more dangerous. Number 3 carried a weapon that could have caused the next Chernobyl. Number 3. Tupolev, the nuclear mortar. In the mid-1950s, the Soviet Union wanted to answer America's M65 atomic ante, not with a cannon, but with something bigger. Development of the TB-1 Oka began in November 1955 at the Kirov plant in Leningrad, spurred by the Soviet Union's need to counter American nuclear artillery advancements. The result was the largest mortar in history. It had an absolutely gigantic 420mm, 20 meter, that is 66 feet long gun. To put that in perspective, that barrel is longer than 3 Sherman tanks placed end to end. The 420mm mortar was intended for firing a 750-kilogram nuclear bomb at a distance of up to 45 kilometers, but the rate of fire was painfully slow, limited to 1 round every 5 minutes, and when it fired, the gearbox was torn from its place. There was destruction of the chassis structure, and there were other breakages. Every single shot broke the vehicle. 4 prototypes were constructed and publicly unveiled during a 1957 Red Square parade. Foreign journalists thought they were fakes, props built to scare the West. They were very real and very broken. With the advances in tactical ballistic missile technology, development of the Oka was canceled in 1960. A nuclear mortar that destroyed itself. Terrifying. But number 2 is an aircraft that looked like the Millennium Falcon, 5 years before Star Wars even existed. Number 2, VVA-14. The vertical takeoff amphibian. The Bardyny-Bereev VVA-14 was a wing and ground effect aircraft developed in the Soviet Union during the early 1970s. It was designed by Robert Bardyny, a member of the Italian Communist Party who found himself in the Soviet Union following the fascist rise in Italy, and became one of the most imaginative aircraft designers in Soviet history. The VVA-14 was designed to destroy United States Navy Polaris missile submarines. The plan was extraordinary. Take off from the water and fly at high speed over long distances, making true flights at high altitude, but also flying efficiently just above the sea surface using the aerodynamic ground effect. It was capable of reaching up to 760 kilometers per hour, 470 miles per hour, with a service ceiling of 8,000 to 10,000 meters, up to 33,000 feet. The aircraft was designed with a battery of 12 RD-3635PR lift engines for vertical takeoff, but the bureau supplying them never delivered. After Bardyny's death in 1974, the project slowed and eventually drew to a close, the aircraft having conducted 107 flights, with a total flight time of 103 hours. The final aircraft was retired in 1987, and now sits rotting at the Menino Air Force Museum outside Moscow, an aircraft ahead of its time, waiting for engines that never came. And now, the vehicle you have been waiting for, the one that made the CIA coin the name, the monster. Number 1. Lun-Class Ekranoplan. The Caspian Sea monster. It was not a ship. It was not a plane. It was something entirely new. Designed by Rostislav Alexeyev in 1975 and used by the Soviet and later Russian navies from 1987, the Lun-Class Ekranoplan was the most insane vehicle the Soviet Union ever built. The Lun Ekranoplan sported an overall length of 242 feet with a wingspan of 144 feet and height to tail top of 63 feet, making it one of the largest operational aircraft ever completed. But it was not an aircraft. Craft like the Lun-Class Ekranoplan are classified as maritime ships by the International Maritime Organization because it flew using ground effect. It flew using lift generated by the ground effect acting on its large wings when within about 4 meters, 13 feet, above the surface of the water. The Lun was powered by 8 Kuznetsov Nk-87 turbofans, not turbojets, mounted on forward canards, each producing 127, 4 kilonewtons of thrust. It had a maximum cruising speed of 550 kilometers per hour, 340 miles per hour, and the weapons. It carried a total of 6 P-270 Moskit-guided anti-ship missiles arranged in 3 twin launchers on the upper fuselage. These missiles were supersonic, ramjet powered, traveling at 1,200 miles per hour with a range of up to 75 miles. Designed specifically to sink American aircraft carriers. Although the ground effect enabled it to fly at low altitude, it had to fly as low as 1.5 to 3.0 meters off the water due to its short wingspan, so it could not fly when seas were even mildly rough. Only one prototype, MD-160, was ever constructed and commissioned into the Soviet Navy in 1987, and its fate. During a towing operation in 2020, the Ekranoplan became stuck just offshore of a sandy beach. The team was unable to free the massive vehicle. Even in retirement, the monster refused to move. The Soviet Union existed for just 69 years, but in that time, they built vehicles that the rest of the world could not even imagine. Some were genius, some were madness, most were both. So, which one shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. And don't stop here. 2 more incredible military stories are waiting for you on your screen right now. Pick either one, because if you enjoyed this video, you're going to love what's next. This is X-Military. See you in the next mission.